Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Apologies for starting a little bit late today. It will not be a Tuesday without some technical difficulties. I missed all of you last week. Happy Women's Month as well. So last week, Tuesday was a public holiday, and therefore we didn't get to do the Tuesday podcast. But we're back this week, and it's good to see all of you, and I hope you're all doing fine. So before we start with the actual podcast, I just want to quickly make an announcement. As you guys know, I just do a quick introduction regarding what the MyRehab Cafe is about and how it works, so that if there are any new viewers, that they know what's cooking. All right, so welcome to the MyRehab Cafe video podcast, everyone. The MyRehab Cafe private and unsearchable Facebook group is the aftercare branch of the MyRehab Group of dual diagnosis addiction centers, or ARC as it was formerly known. The MyRehab centers are private inpatient drug and alcohol rehab centers that offer high-quality healthcare with high-quality outcomes. The MyRehab Cafe Facebook group has exclusive access to loads of content that isn't available on any of the MyRehab public channels. Some of the content includes worksheets, workshops, lectures, support groups, and it's hosted in conjunction with some of the treating providers at the MyRehab inpatient centers. These treating providers are social workers, psychologists, wellness counselors, and volunteers who have extensive experience in the field. Group members also participate in movie and book reviews and from time to time face-to-face events. If you aren't a member of the MyRehab Cafe, you are likely watching this on a public channel. This means that you will have 10 to 20 minutes of access to this live broadcast before we switch over exclusively to the private and unsearchable MyRehab Cafe Facebook group. Remember to sign up and join the MyRehab Cafe, guys, as this is where the interesting part of the live videos happen. The MyRehab Cafe is free to any person that has been through the MyRehab inpatient process. If you haven't been through the inpatient process, but you do want to find out how to join the MyRehab Cafe, please check out the MyRehab Cafe website, which is www.myrehab.com. Just going to repeat that. It's www.myrehab.com. If you want to participate in the workshop, please join in via video or audio via the link in the comments section. Or you can leave a comment and I should be able to bring it onto the screen. And myself and the guests would be able to see what we can do about answering your questions. If you are a MyRehab Cafe member and you want a higher degree of anonymity or confidentiality, then please wait for us to end the broadcast on the public channel before hopping on or posting. I'll make an announcement when we're switching over. With that, let's get started. All right, so for those of you who don't know, every Tuesday our podcast is specifically focused on interpersonal dynamics and relationships, specifically post-discharge from a recovery center. So in essence, we are looking at how to navigate some difficult relationships or some difficult interactions following rehab. This is probably our 8th week, more or less, and we've covered a broad range of topics. We've looked at boundary setting, we've looked at communication styles, we've looked at how to get other individuals to see your needs and wants. We've spoken about conflict management, and this week we're going to talk about I statements, which is more of a practical tool that we're going to look at and how to implement that specific tool. So Again, we are in a public channel, but if anybody wants to join, please just, like I said, leave a comment in the comment section, or you can join via audio or video. So I'm going to ask Kirsty, who's helping us out behind the scenes, just to bring up the worksheet that we're going to work with today. Then we can start looking at that. All right, so like I said, we're dealing with I statements today. Some of my patients or clients that I've dealt with have said to me that they are familiar with I statements, that they've been introduced to this tool maybe in a work setting, as part of a work seminar or a conflict management workshop. It is quite prominent, and it's quite common in the work setting. It was actually also created by an industrial psychologist. So the initial purpose of this tool was to help mediate labor relation issues. But we found that it's actually quite a beneficial tool that any person can use. So before we jump into the I statements, we're just going to start the worksheet, because the worksheet starts by asking you to identify somebody that you love and care about, but who you currently experience conflict or regular arguments with. Because sometimes we disagree, argue, or encounter misunderstandings with the people that we love. We therefore benefit from having a relationship with this person. However, we seem to struggle to set effective and mutual boundaries. So again, apologize for those who are watching for the first time. I will be reverting my gaze to the other screen every now and again, because that's the only way in which I can see the worksheet. So basically, the worksheet starts out by asking you to identify any person that you have a current relationship with, somebody that you actually love and respect, somebody that you support or the other person supports you. There's a mutual beneficial aspect to the relationship. Both parties find it beneficial to have each other in their lives. It may be a romantic relationship, but it can also be a sibling relationship, a parent relationship, a friend relationship, or even a work relationship. But an individual might say, although I love this person, and although I care for this person, and I want this person in my life for the foreseeable future, we've been recently having a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of arguments and fights. And I mean, that happens. I think all of us will be able to tell our own personal stories of how we've encountered arguments or conflict with our siblings or with relatives or even with our partners, romantic partners and friends. And it's not always viable to just say that because there's issues or misunderstandings in the relationship that we should just cut that relationship off or just move on from that relationship. Sometimes it's worth looking at trying to salvage the relationship, and seeing how one can mend those misunderstandings in a way to move forward. Sometimes, unfortunately, we find it hard to have those negotiations, and we often leave things way too long, and then it becomes some serious conflict or arguments. And sometimes there is still a lot of raw emotions that we need to acknowledge maybe and apologize for first before we actually start looking at creating ways of moving forward. But at the end of the day, I think it's a beneficial, like I said, tool that both parties can use. So the 3 open lines on the worksheet is then basically just for you to identify maybe 3 or so people that you identify or relate with from what we're saying now. I think don't start too big, make it smaller and more manageable. So it's better to start off with even, 1 or 3 people that you feel that you might want to have this or try this tool with. Then it also says, in this situation where, like I said, you are in a relationship with somebody, but there is conflict and disagreement, we can attempt to negotiate effective and mutually agreed upon boundaries by using an I statement. So that, like I said, is a tool that we will be looking at today. I do want to, however, create a lot of awareness and caution upon when you're going to use this tool. So this is definitely not a tool you can use with any person you have a relationship difficulty with. there is some key ingredients that you might need to make sure you have set in place before you try to do an I statement or try to use an I statement. So I listed a few of them there, and I said an I statement should, however, only be used if the following ingredients are present in the relationship with the person that you want to set the boundary with. Now, I'm not saying that the following 7 ingredients have to be there on a 100% scale, but there at least needs to be a few of them, and they need to be at least present in some way. So the first one is respect. And what I mean by that is there will be no use in trying to sit around a table and attempt negotiating a boundary if you are talking to somebody or communicating with somebody that has no respect for you. So that can be respecting you to not interrupt you while you're talking, respect you to not bulldoze over you or to lie in the conversation, or maybe to shut you down. So at the end of the day, there needs to be some form of mutual respect from both parties to even try and, like I said, start the conversation. Secondly, and that's quite an obvious one, there obviously needs to be a form of communication. So it will be very difficult to try and initiate a boundary via an I statement if you don't have any communication with said person. So, and I'm definitely in this modern age not talking about communicating on WhatsApp or Twitter or Facebook or any of the social media channels. I'm talking about face-to-face communication. So if the other person is not willing to meet with you face to face, maybe, like I said, there's still too much raw emotions that is cluttering, the other person's ability to meet with you, then I would suggest not attempting to use this tool. So there needs to be, like I said, an ability for both parties to get together face to face in maybe a neutral setting. So not necessarily some place where the one person will feel unsafe or the other person will feel unfamiliar. I think it needs to be a familiar, neutral space for both parties that a person can look at. Number 3 is accountability. And what I mean by that is it will also be futile to try and put or to negotiate boundaries if only one party or one person is willing to take accountability. And accountability is just another word basically for ownership. So because we're going to talk about difficulties in the relationship and past experiences, it doesn't help the one person perceives themselves to be 100% correct and right and the other person to be 100% wrong. There needs to be an acknowledgement that both parties have some form of accountability in where the relationship is at the moment. Then number 4 is honesty. So obviously, and that we find a lot, and I'm going to use the term gaslighting, which we can look at in a different setting. I'm not going to go into that right now. I think it is a word currently that's being thrown around a lot. I think I've heard it and seen it on several articles, but that is actually taken quite out of context. But I think in this scenario, again, it wouldn't make sense to try and negotiate a boundary with somebody that's not willing to be honest. So somebody that's twisting the truth or that is manipulating or wanting the mediator to look at the situation from a different angle. There needs to be at least some form of honesty in terms of what has happened in the past, how did it come about, what was the context or the circumstances around it. So I think that's very important. Is it doesn't help the one person is constantly twisting and turning the truth or the reality of things. Obviously, there is the possibility that both parties won't 100% remember certain incidents the same way. Our memory is our own. So sometimes you remember something that somebody else might not remember, or you remember something in a certain way and somebody else remembers it completely differently. So there might be a perspective or opinion difference, but there can't be a stark, complete disagreement upon what the circumstances or situation was. So honesty definitely needs to be present. Number 5, a willingness. So especially I think in a romantic relationship, there needs to be a willingness from both parties to actually want to work on the relationship. And I often find that when people come for couples therapy or family therapy, you will find the one person really desperately wants to work on the relationship. they're very invested in the process. They understand it's a process. It's going to take time and it's going to be hard work. And the other person kind of is not 100% bought into the whole idea. So they almost still need convincing or encouragement to buy into the process. And at the end of the day, they can kind of check out very easily. So they might feel forced, or they were given an ultimatum to attend these sessions. And then already we're not starting anything on a good foot. So it seems that our time is finished. That went by very quickly on the public channel. The agreement and understanding and commitment, I think, speaks for itself, just the last two. But we didn't even now get to the actual tool itself. I do hope that most of you are on the private channel as well. Otherwise, if you are very interested in this and you want some more information and you're on the public channel, please send me or leave us a comment, and then I can always try and revert with you personally. All right, so thanks so much for those who were watching on the public channel. We'll see you next week, and then we will switch over to the private channel. Thanks.